John and Emily Henry lived a quiet life in the picturesque town of Ostron, a place where everyone knew your name and stories whispered through the leaves of old maple trees. They were the kind of couple that people noticed, not because they sought attention but because their warmth and ease made them naturally stand out. They had been married 5 years today, and on the surface, everything looked perfect. The morning light spilled gently through the lace curtains in their kitchen, casting a soft glow over the worn oak table where they sat. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the faint aroma of Emily's lavender perfume, filling the cozy space. John stirred his coffee absent-mindedly, watching Emily as she smiled at him with a quiet happiness he couldn't help but return. 5 years, Emily said softly, tracing the rim of her cup with a delicate finger. It feels like a lifetime but also just the beginning. John chuckled, the sound low and tender. You always were better with words than me. Emily laughed, the sound light and genuine. Well, that's why we make a good team. They talked about little things, the plans for dinner, the flowers Emily wanted for the garden, a trip they'd been dreaming about. But beneath the easy conversation, there was an unspoken tension neither voiced out loud. 5 years of marriage had layered their relationship with memories both sweet and complicated, moments of joy intertwined with quiet doubts. John reached across the table, his hand finding Emily's. His eyes searched hers, looking for something he couldn't quite name. I want today to be special, he said finally, something we'll remember. Emily squeezed his hand gently, her smile never wavering. It already is. As the day unfolded, Emily left the house to run errands, a quick trip to the local market, a stop by the florist to pick up some lilies, their favorite. John stayed home, tidying up and preparing a small surprise dinner. Hours passed uneventfully at first, but as evening drew near, Emily still hadn't returned. John's calls went straight to voicemail. He tried texting but no reply came. His concern grew, slowly at first, then with a rising knot of anxiety. He stepped outside, scanning the quiet streets bathed in the golden light of dusk. No sign of Emily anywhere. The neighbor's porch lights flickered on, but no one had seen her. By nightfall, John found himself pacing the living room, heart pounding with a mix of fear and confusion. Emily was gone, vanished without a trace on what was supposed to be their happiest day. He dialed the police, voice trembling. My wife's missing. She went out this morning and never came back. As officers took his statement and began their search, John's mind raced through every possible explanation, every argument, every secret he might have missed. But deep down, a chilling thought whispered, this was no ordinary disappearance. Something was terribly wrong. The morning after Emily's disappearance, the small town of Ostron buzzed with uneasy whispers. News traveled fast, and soon the police had John Henry sitting in the cold, sterile interrogation room at the precinct. His calm demeanor from the night before had given way to visible strain. His hands trembled slightly, and his answers came in short, clipped sentences. Detective Claire Reynolds studied John carefully. She'd seen plenty of cases like this, where a missing spouse meant more than just a lost person. Often, it was the start of uncovering darker truths. Mr. Henry, she began gently, can you walk me through everything you remember from yesterday? From the moment Emily left the house. John nodded, voice steady but eyes darting. She said she was going to the market, then the florist. That was around 10 a.m. I was home, cleaning up, preparing dinner for tonight. Detective Reynolds pressed on. Did anything unusual happen? Any arguments, disagreements? John hesitated. No, nothing out of the ordinary. We were fine this morning. But the officers had already noticed things others hadn't. Inconsistencies in John's timeline, his phone records showing a few calls to an unknown number, and neighbors reporting that the couple had been seen arguing quietly days before Emily vanished. As the hours passed, more cracks appeared. John's answers sometimes conflicted with surveillance footage and phone GPS data. When pressed about a late-night text Emily had sent to a friend, one that hinted at fear, John claimed he didn't know about it. The media soon caught wind of the investigation. Headlines appeared overnight: missing wife, husband the prime suspect, and John Henry's story under scrutiny. Reporters camped outside the Henry home, amplifying the pressure. John felt the walls closing in. The town's sympathy shifted, suspicion growing like wildfire. Friends and neighbors started avoiding him, eyes filled with doubt and judgment. Detective Reynolds watched John closely. Mr. Henry, you understand why you're a suspect, right? The inconsistencies, the silence, the missing wife, it all points to you. But we want the truth. We need you to be honest. John swallowed hard, feeling the weight of every glance, every question. I'm telling you, I don't know what happened to Emily. But with no clear answers, no evidence of Emily being alive, and the mounting pressure from the public, the investigation focused sharply on John, the man left behind, holding the pieces of a marriage now shattered and a mystery no one could solve. News of Emily Henry's disappearance spread like wildfire. What started as a quiet, small-town mystery quickly exploded into a national headline. Reporters descended on Ostron, their cameras flashing outside the Henry residence. John's once peaceful life was now under an unforgiving spotlight. Local news anchors speculated endlessly. Was John really innocent or was he hiding something? Talk shows debated his every move, dissecting his expressions and statements for signs of guilt. Social media erupted, with hashtags like #FindEmily and #JusticeForEmily trending within hours. Tabloid magazines ran sensational covers, "Missing Wife, Is John Henry a Killer?" and "Behind Closed Doors, The Dark Secrets of the Henrys." Journalists dug into John's past, uncovering every minor scandal and relationship flaw they could find, painting a picture of a man who might have been capable of violence. Neighbors and friends were interviewed, many reluctantly sharing whispers of past arguments between John and Emily, the kind no one wanted to hear before but now seemed damning. Anonymous sources claimed John had been distant, secretive, even controlling. John's phone rang endlessly. Calls from reporters, curious acquaintances, even strangers demanding answers. His social media accounts were flooded with hateful messages and accusations. Every step he took was monitored, every word he spoke twisted by the media into fodder for suspicion. The pressure was suffocating. In the glare of this relentless public scrutiny, John felt increasingly isolated. His innocence mattered little to the hungry cameras and sensational headlines. The media's narrative had already painted him as the villain in a story that hadn't even been fully told. And as the world watched, waiting for answers, the truth remained buried, hidden beneath layers of suspicion, fear, and a marriage more complicated than anyone could imagine. As the investigation unfolded, the police and the media began to uncover pieces of Emily Henry's private world, fragments that painted a far different picture from the perfect marriage John often described. The key to understanding Emily's disappearance lay hidden in the pages of her diary, a collection of raw, honest thoughts she had kept for years but never shared with anyone. In these entries, Emily's voice was both fragile and fierce, a stark contrast to the smiling woman everyone thought they knew. The pages revealed a woman who felt trapped, not just by the routine of small-town life, but by the very man she had vowed to love forever. "I don't even remember the last time John and I laughed without tension," one entry began, dated just weeks before her disappearance. "It feels like we're living separate lives under the same roof. I'm shouting into a void, hoping he'll hear me, but he's distant, lost in his own world." Flashbacks played out like a silent movie. Emily sitting alone at the kitchen table watching John scroll endlessly on his phone. Dinners filled with forced small talk and silences that stretched like chasms between them. The warmth that once defined their relationship was now replaced by cold distance. Another diary entry, more recent, was filled with quiet despair. "He doesn't see me anymore. He sees the wife he wants, the picture-perfect partner, but not the woman I've become. I'm suffocating. I smile for the world, but inside I'm screaming." Emily wrote about moments when John's affection felt conditional, given only when convenient, withheld when she needed it most. The emotional neglect was a slow poison, draining her hope and replacing it with loneliness. "There's so much I wish I could say to him," she confessed in one entry, "but the words get stuck in my throat, tangled in guilt and fear. I'm scared of pushing him away, but I'm more scared of losing myself." Through these intimate writings, it became clear that Emily's unhappiness was not sudden but had been building quietly over years. She felt invisible in her own marriage, her needs dismissed or ignored. The couple who once dreamed together of adventures and laughter now struggled to communicate even the simplest truths. Flashbacks also revealed more troubling moments. Arguments that escalated quickly, sharp words exchanged behind closed doors, and nights when Emily lay awake, tears slipping silently down her cheeks while John slept unaware beside her. Yet, despite the pain, Emily's diary was not just a chronicle of sorrow. There were glimpses of her fierce determination to reclaim her life, to find freedom from the cage she felt trapped in. She wrote of plans, of moments when she imagined running away, starting fresh somewhere no one knew their names. One chilling entry, dated the day before she disappeared, hinted at something more drastic. "I can't live like this anymore. I have to disappear, not just to be free from him but to find myself again." The diary exposed a woman desperate to escape a marriage that had become a prison. The cracks in their seemingly perfect relationship were deep and wide, and Emily's growing unhappiness was the hidden truth behind her sudden disappearance. As investigators dug deeper, new and unsettling evidence began to surface. Evidence that pointed not just to Emily's absence but to something far more deliberate. The diary entries, once just a window into her unhappiness, took on a darker meaning. Slowly the pieces fell into place. Emily's disappearance was no accident. It was a calculated act of revenge. The police uncovered financial transactions Emily had made secretly, large sums withdrawn over several weeks, purchases of supplies that seemed odd at first, camping gear, prepaid phones, a burner laptop. Surveillance footage showed Emily visiting a remote cabin miles outside town days before vanishing, a place she'd never mentioned to John. More chilling still were the messages she'd sent to a trusted friend, coded texts hinting at a plan to make John pay for his betrayals. It became clear Emily was determined to punish John, not just for his recent affairs but for years of deceit and emotional neglect. Emily's plan was intricate. She staged the scene at their home to look like a violent struggle had taken place. A broken vase, scattered belongings, a door left ajar. She left behind carefully planted clues, a torn piece of her own clothing, blood-like stains, and a final voicemail she recorded in advance, filled with desperation, meant to convince the police and the public that she was a victim of foul play. In her diary she had written bluntly, "If he thinks he can hurt me and walk away, he's wrong. I will disappear, and when they find me gone, or worse, it will be his world that crumbles." Friends and family were shocked as they learned of John's infidelity, secrets he had tried to bury beneath the surface. Emily's diary spoke of stolen moments, whispered phone calls, and the hollow promises that had shattered her trust. This wasn't just about a missing wife, it was about a woman taking control in the only way she knew how. But Emily's plan was risky and cold. By framing John, she set in motion a chain of events that would ruin him publicly, legally, and emotionally. The media frenzy, the police suspicion, the isolation John now faced, all part of her design. Yet beneath her carefully crafted revenge lay a complicated truth. Emily wasn't just a victim or a villain. She was someone pushed to the edge, willing to burn everything to the ground to reclaim her life. As the police tightened their case against John, he found himself trapped in a nightmare he couldn't escape. Every day brought new interrogations, new accusations, and mounting evidence that seemed to build a damning picture. Yet, John clung stubbornly to his innocence, desperate to find the truth behind Emily's disappearance. He spent countless hours poring over their last conversations, trying to remember any detail he might have missed. Friends and family stood divided. Some believed in his innocence, others whispered doubts. John's world was unraveling fast. Detective Claire Reynolds, though skeptical, couldn't ignore the oddities emerging from the investigation. Several clues didn't quite add up. A fingerprint here that didn't belong to either John or Emily, a security camera angle mysteriously disabled, and inconsistencies in witness testimonies. The deeper she dug, the more she sensed a carefully woven web of deception. John reached out to Emily's closest friends, hoping for insight, but most were tight-lipped or fearful. One friend, however, reluctantly handed over a series of secret diary entries Emily had shared only days before she vanished. Entries filled with anger, pain, but also a strange clarity about her intentions. "I'm not the person you think I am," one passage read. "If I disappear, it won't be by accident. He needs to face the consequences, not just for the lies but for everything he took from me." John's heart ached reading those words, but somewhere beneath the hurt, a flicker of hope emerged. If Emily had planned this, then she might still be out there, alive and waiting. The investigation took a new turn. Detectives expanded their search to the remote cabin Emily had visited, uncovering signs she had been living off the grid, supplies, journals, even a hidden phone. It was a breakthrough, but the question remained, why? And what was she planning next? Meanwhile, the town's opinion remained divided. The media, sensing a dramatic twist, shifted their coverage to a game of cat and mouse. The missing wife, the accused husband, and the shadowy woman who might still be pulling the strings. For John, each day was a battle, to prove his innocence, to find Emily, and to uncover the truth buried beneath layers of betrayal, pain, and carefully crafted lies. John refused to be broken. Despite the mounting evidence against him and the relentless scrutiny, he began his own desperate search for Emily. He combed through their past, revisiting places they'd once shared happy memories, hoping to find a clue she might have left behind, a secret message, a hidden sign. He hired a private investigator, someone who could work quietly, away from the glaring spotlight of the media. Together, they traced Emily's movements before she disappeared, piecing together her visits, purchases, and contacts. The deeper they went, the clearer it became that Emily had meticulously planned every step, covering her tracks with chilling precision. But there were cracks in her plan too. The investigator uncovered a few small mistakes, a forgotten receipt here, a momentary lapse in surveillance there, hints that Emily wasn't as invincible as she seemed. Meanwhile, Emily remained a ghost. Rumors circulated about sightings, a woman matching her description spotted in neighboring towns, sometimes far away in a city several hours' drive from Ostron. Each tip was followed, but none led to a confirmed encounter. John's frustration grew, but so did his resolve. He recorded video messages appealing to Emily directly, begging her to come home to end the nightmare. He even went on local radio, his voice raw with emotion, pleading for the truth. Detective Reynolds watched all this unfold with a mixture of professional caution and personal doubt. Was John truly innocent, or just a skilled actor caught in his own web of lies? The truth seemed to slip further away with every new revelation. Yet, one night as John sat alone in the quiet of his home, his phone buzzed with an anonymous message. "Look closer. She's right under your nose." The words sent a shiver down his spine. Could Emily really be closer than anyone thought? Was the woman who had vanished without a trace still watching, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal herself? John stared at the message on his phone, heart pounding. "Look closer. She's right under your nose." Who could have sent it? Was it a friend of Emily's? Or something more sinister? The words echoed in his mind as he scanned his own home. Every room, every corner, every shadow. Was Emily hiding somewhere nearby, watching his every move? Or was this a cruel joke designed to torment him? Desperate for answers, John began retracing every recent conversation and encounter, searching for anyone who might have sent the message. He thought about Emily's closest friends, the private investigators' leads, even the nosy neighbors. But no one stood out. Then he remembered the small antique locket Emily had worn every day, a gift from their early years together. He hadn't seen it since the day she disappeared. Could it hold a clue? Digging through the drawer where she kept her jewelry, John's fingers trembled as he found the locket, surprisingly warm to the touch. Inside, a tiny folded note was tucked away, nearly invisible. Unfolding it carefully, John read Emily's familiar handwriting. "I'm watching but not lost. The truth will come out soon. Trust no one but yourself." The message sent a chill down his spine but also a flicker of hope. Emily was alive. She was still in control. But why was she toying with him like this? Determined to find her before it was too late, John redoubled his efforts, following every lead, chasing every whisper. The mystery deepened, and so did the danger. Unbeknownst to John, Emily was closer than anyone imagined, watching the chaos unfold with cold precision. Her plan was far from over. From her hidden refuge, Emily watched the world she'd left behind with a mixture of satisfaction and bitterness. The turmoil swirling around John was exactly what she had intended, a perfect storm of suspicion, isolation, and relentless pressure. But this was only the beginning. Every move John made, every desperate plea, fed into the narrative she'd crafted. She was no longer the trapped wife, she was the architect of his downfall. The power she felt was intoxicating, a stark contrast to the helplessness that had consumed her for years. Yet beneath the surface, Emily's mind was racing. She wasn't just seeking revenge anymore, she was searching for freedom. Freedom from the lies, the pain, and the suffocating weight of their marriage. Her plan required patience. She had to stay hidden, avoid detection, and keep the authorities chasing shadows. But she also needed to make a choice. How far was she willing to go to break free? And could she live with the consequences? In the quiet moments alone, Emily's resolve faltered. Memories of better times with John crept in. Laughter in sunlit parks, whispered dreams in the dark, fleeting moments of happiness that now felt like echoes from another life. Still she steeled herself. The next phase of her plan was imminent. She would reveal just enough truth to upend everything, but not enough to return. She was rewriting her story on her own terms. Back in Ostron, John sensed the shift too. The chase was no longer just about proving innocence. It was about understanding Emily, the woman he thought he knew and the stranger she had become. Emily's days in hiding were a tense balancing act. She moved cautiously, always aware that one wrong step could unravel everything. Yet, she couldn't resist the urge to manipulate the story from afar. Through anonymous tips and cryptic messages, she fed the police fragments of the truth, enough to keep John on edge but never enough to clear his name. Meanwhile, John's private investigator made a breakthrough. A discarded receipt found near the cabin revealed a recent purchase of plane tickets. Tickets in Emily's name, but for a destination no one had considered. This clue gave John a sliver of hope that Emily might be planning to leave the country, or maybe even start a new life somewhere far away. John's emotions were a turbulent storm: relief, fear, anger, and heartbreak all at once. He confronted Detective Reynolds with the new evidence, pleading for a fresh approach to the case. The detective, torn between her instincts and the mounting proof, reluctantly agreed to reopen the investigation from a new angle. Back in her secret refuge, Emily sensed the walls closing in. Her perfect plan was beginning to crack. The thrill of control gave way to a gnawing fear. What if John found her before she was ready? What if the truth she sought to expose destroyed them both? One cold evening, as rain tapped steadily against the cabin windows, Emily made a decision. She would reach out, but only on her terms. A letter, carefully written and left in a place only John could find, would be the next step. A letter that would reveal the darkest secrets of their marriage, her reasons for disappearing, and a warning that their lives would never be the same again. For John, the discovery of that letter would be both a revelation and a reckoning. The moment when everything he thought he knew about Emily, their marriage, and the life they shared would be forever changed. John found the letter tucked beneath the loose floorboard in their bedroom, a place only he and Emily knew held their secret stash of keepsakes. His hands shook as he unfolded the paper, the familiar handwriting both haunting and intimate. The letter was raw, filled with bitterness and sorrow. Emily wrote of betrayal, of the countless lies John had told, the late nights unaccounted for, and the hollow promises that had eroded her trust. She confessed to feeling invisible, unheard, and deeply wounded. "I loved you once," the letter began. "But love is not enough when it's built on deceit. You made me disappear in every way that mattered long before I vanished from your life." Emily admitted to planning her disappearance, not out of cruelty but out of desperation. She wanted John to feel the isolation and suspicion she'd carried for years. But she warned him too, this isn't the end. There are truths you still don't know and consequences you can't imagine. Reading the letter, John felt a mixture of guilt and confusion. He hadn't realized how deeply Emily had suffered, or how much damage his actions had caused. Yet beneath the pain, a spark of hope remained. The letter was a lifeline, a sign that Emily was alive and willing to communicate even if from the shadows. Determined to respond, John began drafting a letter of his own, one that acknowledged his mistakes but begged for understanding and forgiveness. He knew the road ahead would be long and uncertain, but he was no longer willing to be a passive player in this devastating game. John carefully sealed his letter and sent it through a private courier service, ensuring it reached Emily without anyone else intercepting it. It was a fragile gesture, an olive branch extended across a growing chasm of pain and mistrust. Days passed with no response and the silence gnawed at him. Yet John refused to give up. He poured himself into the investigation, cooperating fully with Detective Reynolds and the private investigator, desperate to find any clue to Emily's whereabouts. Meanwhile, Emily read John's letter in her secluded hideout. The words stirred conflicting emotions. Part of her longed to reach out and rebuild what had been broken, but another part remained guarded, wary of reopening old wounds. She realized that her revenge had come at a cost. The more she pushed John away, the more complicated their tangled history became. And yet she knew she couldn't return to the life they once shared, not without truth, healing, and accountability. Emily made a decision. It was time to take control of her narrative once and for all. She would reveal herself, but only on her terms, in a way that forced John and the world to confront the realities behind their perfect facade. As Emily prepared to step out of the shadows, John braced himself for the moment that could either destroy them both or offer a chance at redemption. One crisp morning, as the town buzzed with rumors and speculation, a local reporter received an anonymous tip. Emily Henry would make a public statement that afternoon at the small community park where she and John had once shared so many moments. The media swarm quickly assembled, cameras and microphones poised for the revelation everyone had been waiting for. John stood at the edge of the crowd, heart pounding, unsure whether to hope or fear what was to come. Then, emerging from the crowd of onlookers, Emily appeared. She looked both changed and familiar, stronger, more resolute, but carrying the weight of everything she had endured. The cameras flashed, capturing every moment as she stepped up to the microphone. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion as she began to speak, telling the story of a marriage fractured by lies, betrayal, and loneliness. She revealed the pain that had driven her to vanish, the carefully planned disappearance meant to wake John and the town to the truth beneath the surface. But Emily also spoke of forgiveness, of the complicated love that still lingered despite the wounds. She made it clear that her return wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming her identity and seeking a future where honesty could finally exist. John listened, torn between relief and regret, knowing their lives would never be the same. The truth was finally out in the open, and with it came the chance to begin rebuilding, if they were both willing to face the difficult path ahead. Emily's public return sent shockwaves through the town. The media frenzy intensified, and every detail of her disappearance and their fractured marriage was dissected and debated. Some sympathized with her pain and bravery, while others questioned her motives and the methods she used. John faced a whirlwind of emotions: relief that Emily was alive, guilt over the pain he'd caused, and fear of the uncertain road ahead. He knew rebuilding trust would be the hardest challenge of all. Detective Reynolds reopened the investigation, now focusing on uncovering the full truth behind their marriage and the events leading up to Emily's disappearance. New evidence came to light: hidden messages, financial secrets, and confessions that neither John nor Emily had been willing to share before. For Emily and John, the journey toward healing was rocky. Counseling sessions revealed deep wounds but also moments of understanding and empathy. They learned to confront the lies that had poisoned their relationship and to communicate in ways they never had. Outside their personal struggle, the town watched closely, some rooting for their reconciliation, others skeptical that forgiveness was possible. Just as John and Emily seemed to be taking tentative steps toward reconciliation, a new and shocking truth emerged, one that threatened to shatter everything all over again. Detective Reynolds, digging deeper into Emily's background and the circumstances of her disappearance, uncovered evidence that didn't fit Emily's carefully crafted narrative. Financial records showed transactions Emily hadn't disclosed, and surveillance footage placed her far from the safe refuge she had described. More disturbingly, inconsistencies in Emily's stories began to surface. Witnesses who had supposedly seen her in certain places contradicted her claims. The diary entries that once seemed heartfelt now appeared selectively edited, with gaps and alterations. When confronted, Emily's calm facade cracked. Under pressure, she admitted parts of her story were fabricated, not just to protect herself, but to manipulate public sympathy and keep John under suspicion. She had indeed planned the disappearance, but the reasons were more complicated, involving secrets she had kept hidden even from John. Lies layered upon lies, each designed to control the narrative and secure her own escape. John was left reeling. The woman he had sought to understand and forgive was not entirely who she claimed to be. Trust, already fragile, was now almost impossible to rebuild. As the truth came out, the town's perception shifted once again. Emily was no longer just a victim or a wronged wife. She was also a master of deception, blurring the lines between truth and lies. The question remained, could anything genuine survive in the wake of such betrayal? John sat in stunned silence as Emily's confession hung heavy between them. The trust he had fought so hard to rebuild now lay in ruins. The woman he thought he knew was a stranger hiding behind layers of deceit. Why? John finally whispered, voice breaking. Why all the lies? Emily's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. Because the truth was never simple. Because I needed control in a life where I felt powerless. I wanted to hurt you, but I also wanted to protect myself. I was scared, John. More scared than you can imagine. Detective Reynolds watched the confrontation quietly, knowing this was a turning point. The case was no longer just about disappearance or suspicion. It was about two broken people caught in a web of secrets and pain. The media frenzy intensified again, with headlines swinging from sympathy to scandal. Supporters of Emily felt betrayed. Supporters of John felt vindicated. But amidst the chaos, John realized that the only way forward was to face the truth head-on, no matter how painful. He decided to press charges, not for revenge but to find clarity and justice. Emily's actions had caused real harm, and the law had to take its course. Yet beneath the legal battle, something unexpected lingered, a fragile hope that honesty, however brutal, could eventually lead to healing. As the town held its breath, John and Emily faced their most difficult chapter yet, a fight not just for their reputations but for their very souls. The courtroom was tense, every eye fixed on John and Emily as the proceedings unfolded. Testimonies revealed a tangled history of betrayal, manipulation, and shattered trust. Emily's calculated disappearance, the lies she spun, and John's failings as a husband were laid bare for all to see. Emily's defense painted her as a woman pushed to the edge, desperate to escape a toxic marriage. John's lawyer argued the emotional and psychological torment John endured, the damage caused by her deceit and the years of uncertainty. Outside the courtroom, the town remained divided. Some whispered about Emily's bravery, others about John's innocence. But for both of them, the trial was more than just a legal battle. It was a reckoning of their past and a painful step toward an uncertain future. Late at night, John sat alone, reflecting on the wreckage of their lives. Despite everything, he couldn't deny the complexity of his feelings: anger, sorrow, and a lingering love that refused to fade. Emily, isolated and under scrutiny, wrestled with guilt and regret. The power she once felt slipped away, replaced by the harsh reality of consequences. The trial would decide their fate in the eyes of the law. But beyond the verdict, John and Emily faced a deeper question. Could they ever find peace with themselves, or each other? As the trial approached its final days, both John and Emily sat in the courtroom, exhausted but resolute. The judge's stern gaze reminded them that this was about more than just their personal pain. It was about justice and accountability. Emily took the stand one last time. Her voice was quieter now, stripped of the bravado she had once worn like armor. She admitted to fabricating parts of her story, but also spoke honestly about the years of loneliness and betrayal that had driven her actions. John listened, his heart heavy but open. He understood that their story was not a simple tale of villain and victim. It was a complicated, raw human drama filled with mistakes, regrets, and broken promises. When the jury finally retired to deliberate, the courtroom held its breath. The weight was unbearable, each moment stretching endlessly. Finally, the foreperson returned with the verdict. Both John and Emily braced themselves, knowing that whatever the outcome, their lives would never be the same. The judge pronounced the decision, a compromise reflecting the complexity of their case. Emily was found guilty of certain charges related to her disappearance and deception, but mitigating factors tempered the sentence. John was cleared of any involvement in wrongdoing but encouraged to seek counseling to heal from the ordeal. As they left the courtroom, John and Emily exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of their shared pain and the long road ahead. Though justice had been served, the true challenge was just beginning. Finding a way to live with the scars, the truths and the memories, and perhaps someday to forgive. In the weeks and months following the trial, John and Emily each began the difficult journey of rebuilding their lives. Though the wounds were deep, time and honesty slowly helped to mend the fractures between them and within themselves. They never returned to the marriage they once had. Instead, they found a cautious peace in acceptance of their past mistakes, their imperfections, and the truth that had finally come to light. John focused on healing and rediscovering who he was outside the shadow of suspicion. Emily sought redemption in therapy and meaningful connections, learning to face her fears without deception. The town moved on, the headlines faded, but the story of John and Emily Henry remained a poignant reminder of how love and lies can intertwine, and how, even in the darkest moments, hope can flicker. Sometimes the greatest twist isn't in the story itself, but in the strength it takes to find light after the darkness.